Hello, this is Caden Cubensis. Welcome to Chapter 1 of Psilocybin Mushrooms and Their Natural Habitat by Paul Stamets. I got my friend Melly here. Not anymore. All right, so this is an amazing book about psilocybin mushrooms. I'm going to be reading the entire book over the course of a small series. This is the first video, a guide to the history, identification, and use of fungi. So it'll basically teach you everything that you need to know. He has an introduction. I'm going to read this to you. This is just an intro to the book. So let's get right into this. Mushrooms are mysterious. Some can feed you, some can heal you, some can kill you, and some can send you on a life-changing spiritual journey. Psilocybin mushrooms are unique. They could help you live a happier, more fulfilling, more peaceful life, and encourage you to be a more responsible Earth citizen. Many people have a hard time describing their psilocybin experiences, which can transcend our everyday vocabulary and spiritual grounding. The ineffable effects can be profound. I propose that psilocybin mushrooms can aid us and ultimately our planet, or at least redirect us from our path of self-destruction. Psilocybin mushrooms could help save the world and us as a species. With psilocybin mushrooms and their natural habitats, this book, you are embarking on an adventure of self-discovery and immersion into nature. I chose this title to honor Alexander H. Smith and his book, Mushrooms and Their Natural Habitats. My professor at the Evergreen State College, Dr. Michael Bugh, introduced me to Dr. Smith in the mid-1970s. Both have contributed substantially to the field of mycology, particularly as it relates to the psilocybin mushroom species. These two scientists accepted the sincerity of my interest in psilocybin mushrooms when I was in my early 20s, encouraging me to pursue my studies despite how controversial they were at the time. I remain forever grateful to these two and all of my mentors. Psilocybin mushrooms can inspire cosmic visions as well as insight into oneself, the world, and the universe around us. Like recognizing an old friend, once you come to know these beings, they will forever be your fungal allies. And once befriended, they will entice you to photograph, pick, and partner with them to spread their spores and mycelium. This book will show you how to embark on an intellectual journey with psilocybin mushrooms and their allies. For many of you, your encounters with psilocybin mushrooms will be sacred experiences. Be careful and respect of these powerful organisms. They are ancient, having their forms long before we evolved ours. I've been studying psilocybin mushrooms and their natural habitats since 1974, publishing my first book, Psilocybin Mushrooms. Oh, my dog's going crazy. Just a second. Okay, resuming. I've been studying psilocybin mushrooms and their natural habitat since 1974, publishing my first book, Psilocybin Mushrooms and Their Allies, in 1979, and my second book, Psilocybin Mushrooms of the World, in 1999. This book is my third identification guide, and it reflects my continuing, lifelong dedication to expanding the horizons of knowledge about psilocybin mushrooms. Okay. Describing many species and growing techniques never before presented. Mycology is the science of fungi, and mycologists are our fungal knowledge keepers. According to G.C. Ainsworth in his Introduction to the History of Mycology, the word mycology and mycologist debuted in 1836, a very early monograph of fungi. Rarorium Plantarium Historia dates to 1601, and early mentions of the genus Psilocybe include an 1834 report published in the Transactions of the American Psilocybe Society. Both texts are written in Latin. There are few references on psilocybin mushrooms in these books, in part due to the mushrooms' eclectic and elusive nature. He uses some big words in here. Most psilocybin mushrooms do not stand out and are rare to find, with the notable exception of the majestic, dung-loving species like Psilocybe cubensis, which is the name in my username, Caden Cubensis, because it's a strain, and that's awesome. Historically, academically trained mycologists with expertise in psilocybin mushrooms were few and far between. As a result, motivated amateurs have contributed substantially to the knowledge base of psilocybin mushrooms. The roles of these passionate citizen scientists, just like in the field of astronomy and so many other areas of study, deepen our understanding of nature. In fact, Charles Darwin was not a classically trained professional biologist. He studied to be a priest, earning a Bachelor's of Arts degree. Yet his theories on speculation and evolution are known as scientific breakthroughs of enormous significance. I need a breather. This is a picture of psychedelic mushrooms. This species is Psilocybe azurensis. What does it say? One of the most potent psilocybin mushrooms in the world. I actually didn't know that. Continuing, many of the pioneers in mycology were not professionally employed to work on fungi, but were driven by personal fascinations. Unfortunately, this remains the key aspect of mycology to this day. Observed, D. L. Hawksworth in his 2006 article Mycology and Mycologists for the 8th International Mycology Congress, but the skilled enthusiasts ultimately depend on the backup of the professionals, access to reference collections and libraries, and increasingly comprehensive and authoritative databases. Hawkinsworth even cited an article by R. Watling titled The Role of the Amateur in Mycology. What would we do without them? And now a new generation of self-taught mycologists has adopted mycology as their profession. The word amateur no longer fits. Their passion, experience, intelligence, and on-the-job training bring a fresh perspective to a field that is more invigorated than ever. To this day, relatively few academic mycologists have enough experience to safely guide you to identify, let alone merge with, psilocybin mushrooms. The current psilocybin awakening is a cross-cultural transformation emerging from the underground. In these times, psilocybin practices are informed by a combination of cultural traditions backed with solid science. With this guide in your hand, you join others across the world who steward and share the wisdom of psilocybin mushrooms. Today, we are tasked with making choices that affect the future of the social and biological networks that nourish us and our environments. Our collective duty as psilocybin allies is to create networks of collaboration that benefit the commons while respecting indigenous traditions, whose histories go back hundreds, if not thousands of years. Psilocybin mushrooms are also being adopted as sacraments by indigenous peoples whose lineages do not have documented histories of use. Christian, Judaic, Islamic, Hindu, and Buddhist adherents are currently using psilocybin mushrooms because the common experience they share strengthened feelings of oneness, forgiveness, kindness, and universal consciousness. Ironically, these very institutions, religions, and cultures that suppressed psilocybin in the past are increasingly benefiting from the modern use of these sacred mushrooms. Psilocybin mushrooms continue to give us the wisdom and compassion to heal the divisions that keep us apart. There's a very awesome quote right here. We are all indigenous to the earth. Psilocybin mushrooms unite us. We are one with the universe. You hear that? We are all indigenous to the earth. Psilocybin mushrooms unite us. We are one with the universe. Quote by Paul Stamets there. Very amazing quote. The key being there, psilocybin mushrooms unite us. And that is how it works. You know, when you take mushrooms with a friend group or with a friend, it's almost like you can telepathically communicate, which is crazy because that's almost what he's trying to get at there by saying they unite us. They make you happy. They make you able to understand one another, so on and so forth. We'll get into more of it right here. This guide is designed to help you find psilocybin mushrooms in a variety of habitats across much of the world. Psilocybin mushrooms are diverse. They come in many shapes, sizes, and colors. They grow in fields and forests. They are typically ground dwellers, or in biological lingo, terrestrial. Yet many psilocybin active species, estimated to exceed 220 different psilocybin species, share common features that I will describe. By focusing on these traits and learning basic mushroom taxonomy, you are more likely to safely identify psilocybin mushrooms and lessen the risk of accidentally picking poisonous mushrooms. The success of a mushroom field trip depends on sound knowledge, timing, and habitat awareness. Over time, and if you pay careful attention to details, you will be better informed about which species produce psilocybin and which do not. This book will not make you an expert. However, provided you heed its cautionary advice, it will minimize risks and maximize benefits, while leading you step by step to the learning curve. Continuing on, mushrooms are miniature pharmaceutical factories, producing hundreds of thousands of molecules. Psilocybin and psilocin are the two molecules of particular interest, being the most potent compounds, one that produce having trouble reading. One that produce psychoactive effects. But do psilocybin mushrooms have other possible benefits? Working with scientists, we have found that psilocybin-related tryptamines, like norepinephrine and metabolite of biotosine, are potently antiviral in vitro, and there are many other active beneficial molecules hidden within them. Although psilocybin mushrooms appear to be safe, some mushroom species that grow along psilocybin mushrooms produce toxic compounds that can be deadly. Only about 15,000 mushroom species have been identified, out of what researchers estimate to be a total of 150,000 possible mushroom species, with a larger fungal genome that includes mushrooms, molds, and yeast, estimated to contain between 2 and 12 million species. More than 2,000 new species of fungi are being published each year. Insane. That means we're discovering 2,000 new strains of mushrooms, psychoactive or non-psychoactive, mostly a variety of all of them, edible, deadly, psychoactive, all of them. These estimates keep expanding as the fungal genome is explored. Fungal genome. Each species has a unique chemistry. I see mushrooms as molecule wizards. Adapt, and okay, resuming. I see mushrooms as molecular wizards, adept at producing a vast array of secondary metabolites that help the species compete, cooperate, and survive. Many of these metabolites have implications for humans and habitat health, and psilocybin is just one stellar example of this. It turns out that known psilocybin mushrooms, known poisonous mushrooms, and known tasty edible mushrooms are similar in their numbers. Each of these three groups make up less than 2% of all characterized mushroom species today. My greatest concern? On many occasions, I have found psilocybin mushrooms growing side by side with deadly poisonous ones, sometimes close enough to touch. See the photo here. So here you have the psychedelic species, and then right next to it is a deadly mushroom species that can kill you. So these can grow right next to each other. Obviously, don't pick it and eat it if it's growing right next to a deadly one, because that could be deadly. You don't know if it's contaminated or not. Picking mushrooms indiscriminately when psilocybin and poisonous mushrooms grow so closely together could be a fatal mistake. A telltale characteristic that most psilocybin mushrooms share is that they usually bruise bluish. That is very true. I would look into that because you never want to assume a mushroom is psychedelic. You need to do research. But not all gilled mushrooms that bruise blue are psilocybin species. That furthers my point. For instance, the tantalizing bluing stem of Inosperma calamastratium. These are some really big words for mushrooms. formerly Inocybe calamisteria, I don't know if I'm saying these right, but I'm trying my best, has not yet been found to contain psilocybin or psilocin. Some Mycena species bruise bluish, but upon analysis, no psilocybin or psilocin has been detected. Please note that the blue color is not uniquely tied to psilocybin or psilocin. Other compounds, many of which have not yet been identified, are at play. When psilocybin mushrooms do bruise bluish, it is in part due to psilocybin degrading in a cascade reaction from enzymes into quinoid psychological oligomeres, compounds similar to the indigo. They are not psychoactive, yet these compounds could be precursors and theoretically reconverted back into psilocin. The lesson here: do not underestimate the multidirectional complex biochemistries of psilocybin mushrooms. Chemists are still unraveling their mysteries. Mushrooms are wizards at concocting exotic molecules. To minimize your risk of misidentification and help you stay alert to seemingly ambiguous taxonomic similarities, I highlight a hint. Okay, let's take a break. Okay, so here's the page that I'm reading. Right here, we have a picture of some psychedelic mushrooms. This one is actually Psilocybe cubensis. So I'm going to read this here to you. Psilocybe cubensis is the most commonly cultivated and used psilocybin mushroom in the world. The mushrooms typically bruise bluish when scratched, a telltale sign that this species contains psilocybin and psilocin. However, not all mushrooms that bruise bluish contain psilocybin. Very important information. Keep that always in mind if you ever are picking mushrooms or looking for psychedelic mushrooms. Now, to continue on, to minimize your risk of misidentification and help you stay alert to seemingly ambiguous taxonomic similarities, I highlight a handful of psilocybin species that co-occur in nature with poisonous species in the same generic groups. For example, Conocybula cainocapus, formerly Philonodea cyanopus, I'm just reading the names of the mushrooms, I don't really have to, is psilocybin active. Folitona rogus is deadly poisonous. Galerina steglichi is psilocybin active. Galerina marginia is deadly poisonous. Inocybe argiensis is psilocybin active. Inocybe geophylla is poisonous due to its muscarine, a natural plant alkaloid content that is sometimes fatal to dogs. Other muscarine containing inosibes have killed people, although rarely. Several of the more than 1,050 species. Explaining this other picture real quick, this is another example of psychedelic mushrooms right next to some very deadly poisonous mushrooms that could kill you. You never want to pick psychedelic mushrooms if they're right next to deadly poisonous mushrooms, as the psychedelic ones could be contaminated, therefore, obviously, leading to death, because you don't want to eat a dead mushroom or the death mushrooms. Those will kill you. This is why you have to understand mycology. And if you're ever going to go mushroom hunting or mushroom picking, you need to know what you're picking. You can't just take somebody's word for it or take your own word for it. You have to do research and understand what you're consuming or picking, even. So, to continue on, several of the more than 1,050 known species of brown-spored inosibes, as well as some species of white-spored mycenas, contain muscarine. Not all of these 1,400 plus mycena species have been analyzed, so there are likely more than inosibes that contain toxins. Sorry, there are likely more inosibes that contain toxins. The above named species demand highly refined expert identification skills, and most experts I know are reluctant to self-experiment with these psilocybin active species given so many other safe alternatives. We still do not yet know the full array of toxins, if any, that can lurk within psilocybin species within the genera Conocybe, Phyllotonia, Galerina, Gymnophilus, Futius, and Inocybe. Although these are academically interesting questions, I discourage bioassaying species in these outlier potential dangerous genera, at least for now. Given the unknowns here, I strongly encourage you to stay within the safe guardrails of human experience and prioritize the species of psilocybe and pennilis, which we know mushrooms are safe to consume from thousands of years of experimentation, and more recently from modern analytical techniques. The good news is that science has by large validated what our ancestors discovered through eons of experimentation. It is best to stay within the confines of what has been tested and determined to be safe when it comes to ingestion. Although, the adage in medicine is that the difference between a drug and a toxin and dose. Psilocybin is surprisingly non-toxic. Even at extremely high doses, one estimate is that you would have to consume nearly 42 pounds of fresh psilocybin mushrooms to reach the LD50 limit, which is the lethal dose to 50% of humans. That would kill you. For a person weighing 154 pounds, this dose represents more than 1/4 of their body weight. So you would have to eat so much psilocybin mushrooms, it wouldn't even be the psilocybin that kills you. It would be the fact that you ate too many mushrooms, just in general. Like you could kill yourself if you just ate too many normal mushrooms. Like psychedelics, it's not the psilocybin can't kill you. It would simply be you ate too much mushroom, dude. So yeah. Please note that although psilocybin has extremely low toxicity, many other compounds in mushrooms have not yet been identified or tested. Since mushrooms in general are highly complex in their chemistry, sometimes containing interacting molecules whose mechanisms of actions are still poorly understood, it is wise for most people to choose the psilocybin mushroom species tested and proven by humans over hundreds of years. Those with genera psilocybe and penniless, focusing on psilocybin mushrooms with the purplish brown to black spores, avoid the risks associated with Conocybe, Philautina, Galerina, Gemophilus, Inocybe, and Futius, and yeah, which have rusty brown to brown spores, not the purplish brown to black spores. Characteristics of species in the genera Psilocybe and Panellus. These bottom lines is to practice an abundance of caution when trying to identify any mushroom you may ingest. Because your mistake could kill you or others, mushrooms are powerful organisms deserving of respect and serious study. There's one more quote from Paul Stamets in the introduction to this book, and it is a warning. The warning goes, never consume any mushroom, nor give them to others to eat unless you are positive of its identification and it is safe. Since the mistake of misidentifying a mushroom could potentially hurt, harm, or kill you or others, you need to understand what you are taking and the species that you are taking, the proper dose that you need to take, and honestly, where to take it. All right. Next video, we are going to get into the first chapter of this book, Psilocybin Perspectives. I'm really excited to share this book with everybody, and I hope that you were able to follow along. I know I run out of breath while I'm reading this a lot. It's a lot to read, and there's some very big words in here, but this is very important um, in terms of learning. I feel like everybody should know this. This is not information that needs to be hidden, and it's information that needs to be explored and shared by everybody. Everybody should know this and be sharing this information with everybody because mushrooms are everywhere. They always will be everywhere, and mushrooms will be here long after we are gone. So it's worth studying up on them and learning their benefits. Thank you for following along, and I will catch you in the next video where we start chapter 1 of psilocybin mushrooms and their natural habitat. Super excited to share this with everybody. Peace out. Thanks for watching. This has been Caden Cubensis. Bye.